Fiona and Cake work together to save a few citizens from a rat bus. However, two people fall out of the bus while more of them were still inside, leading Cake to catch the ones who fell out as Fiona chased the rat. She threw a metal rod and it hit one of its tires. This led the rat to get angry and chase after her. She then picked up a hammer, but the rat bus bumped into the scaffold she was on, and they all fell into the hotel pool. She got onto a boat as the rat bus tries to attack her, but the ice prince suddenly freezes the pool. He warns her that the ice won't hold the rat for long, and he made ice skates for her to use. She then skates her way to the bus and attacks it, saving the rest of the people. Ice Prince tells her and Cake that they're great fighters and asked them if they wanted to join him on magical adventures. She was excited and the cat was more casual as they both agreed. When she slowly went to take Ice Prince's hand, he suddenly sounds like an alarm clock, confusing her. The ice melts and the both fall into the pool water. Fiona wakes up to hear her alarm clock, which made her realize that she was dreaming. She snoozes the clock for another 10 minutes before it went off again. Once she stops it, she looks around her apartment and turns on the TV only to be annoyed when she saw Cheers on every channel. As she get dressed for work, she tells Cake about her dream and told it was awesome. Cake begins acting weird after she sees a vision of some blue sparkles on the fridge, so she goes and pushes the ice dispenser and begin playing in the ice. Fiona grows concerned, so she gave Cake a tuna sandwich. Cake hesitates to eat, which made her book an appointment with the vet, since there was an opening at lunchtime, so she took the cat with her. She then gets onto a bus and began her job as a tour guide. She points out the city post office, which is the oldest building, revealing in 1911 that there was a fire, but Marshall interrupts her. She introduces Marshall by telling everyone he's the world's best unknown musician and they could catch him on the corner of 14th and Elm in an hour. When Fiona sees a statue of a couple penguins at the aquarium, she remembers her dream and asks if anyone is into dream analysis before revealing her dream to everyone. She also explained it's like the universe is trying to tell her something. Marshall suggests that she's dreaming about Ice Prince because she got dumped by DJ Flame. Fiona blushes. She says that's not the reason and that her dreams are way more significant. Cake starts to meow, so Fiona pulls her out of her cage and told everyone that Cake also agrees with her. They pass by an ice skating rink and Cake start running to the back of the bus. She pulls Cake off from a person and apologizes. A mysterious stranger shouted that's enough and reveals herself to be Queenie, her boss. Queenie tell her that she heard Fiona's tours suck, so she went undercover to see if it's true. She said not only it is true, but she brought along her cat. She tried to explain why she brought Cake with her that day, but it ran to the bus door wanting to be let out. Queenie has the bus driver stop the bus. As everyone got out, Queenie understood that Marshall never pays for the ride. She then fires Fiona, who is shocked but then angrily reveals she never wanted the job in the first place. Queenie then tells her to bring back her uniform if she wants her deposit back. Fiona walks with Cake down the sidewalk and passes by a bunch of people while complaining that nothing exciting ever happens and people are all boring. She then goes to a bakery and angrily orders a coffee. Gary greets Fiona and Cake before realizing that Cake's acting weird and Fiona's in a bad mood. She explained that she just got fired. Her cat's acting weird, so she have to take her to the vet, but she can't afford it now since she just got fired. Gary gave her a cookie. He tells her it's still in development, so he wanted her honest feedback. He tells her it wasn't done. She tells him that he should know by now that she has zero impulse control when it comes to sugary food. He tells her that he's going to make her more, but this time he needs detailed feedback. Cake sees more ice sparkles, so she goes to the fridge but finds a mice. Gary and Fiona see her chase and catch it. Gary's boss comes out and said no roughhousing in her bakery as she separates Cake from the mouse and throws Cake back to Fiona. Gary tells her that there shouldn't be mice in the bakery either. Beatrice picks up one of Gary's gingerbread man cookies and drops it on the floor, breaking his heart. She also puts a puff on the ground and the mouse chose to take the puff instead of his cookie. Beatrice then tells him to stick to what's traditional. Fiona tells Gary to quit, but he responds that he can't until he gets his recipe right. He also reminds her about her vet appointment, so she quickly puts Cake in the cage and ran off with a bag of biscuits. She then runs into Marshall again and accidentally gets coffee on her uniform. She can't get her deposit back now. Marshall wonders if Fiona quit her job, but she tells him she got fired. When Fiona asks him if he'd tell his mom she's going to be a bit late on rent this month, Marshall refuses because they weren't in good terms, but he does tell her that his friend Ellis can help fix Cake for the cookies Gary made. She then gets to the forest where she met someone who loves nature. Fiona assumes that the stranger was Ellis and asks if he could fix the cat. His name was Hunter. She started to walk away, but Hunter asks if she was looking for Ellis and leads her to him. They see Ellis feeding squirrels some peanuts. When she approaches Ellis, he throws peanuts on her and tells the squirrels to eat her face. Fiona asks him for help, and when he demands what was in it for him, she gives him the cookies. He accepts the payment. Ellis gave Cake some catnip after rubbing it in his hands. He says she knows what's wrong with Cake. She said she didn't know, but she then suggested that maybe Cake is sick or feels trapped in her crummy little apartment. Fiona goes on by saying maybe she's bored with everything and wishes the world was more magical. Cake suddenly gets up and started running while she chases her down. Cake, seeing the blue sparkles in an ice cream stand freezer, and jumps into it. During the Mushroom War, some oozers chase after Simon and a young Marceline. They both hide in a sewer pipe, with Marceline stopping Simon from using the crown to protect them, instead waiting for the oozers to leave on their own. One of Marceline's buttons falls off from her cloth, and Simon quickly fixes it with his sewing kit. As Marceline drifts off to sleep, he assures her that she will always be fine even without him. At present, Simon wakes up and gets ready for the day. He opens up his home, revealed to be an exhibit on the human island in U. A few humans and a dog watches him, and Simon describes what life was like back in the 20th century. A little girl is dressed as Fiona and asks Simon if he is going to write any more Fiona and Cake stories. Simon insists that he didn't write them, but Ice King did. When she asks if he could sign her copy of the fan fiction, Simon angrily throws it in the trash, causing her to cry. Something hidden underneath a blanket in the exhibit moves. The dog asks what it is, but Simon pushes the dog away, accidentally removing the translator in the process, and he shuts down the exhibit. He opens his closet that contains objects related to Gulb, but before he can do anything, the thing underneath the blanket silently warns him not to try what he is planning. Simon goes to the Candy Kingdom Tavern for a drink, but his mood is not lifted. He angrily rejects ice with his drink, and when he closes out his tab, he finds a picture of Betty in his wallet. Dirt Beer Guy inquires if Simon had a chance to look at a manuscript he sent, noting Fiona and Cake was an inspiration to him. Simon tries to brush off talking about the old stuff, but Dirt Beer Guy insists he should be proud of having written an entire universe in a fugue state. Simon grows angry at this, but calms down when Finn points out he and Jake also enjoyed the stories. Simon finally admits his frustrations to Finn. Because he's no longer magic but a normal human, he can't relate to anyone in U anymore, much less Fiona and Cake. Finn points out there's more humans in U than ever, but Simon tells him that they are all futuristic humans compared to his 20th century, and that he might as well be a dinosaur to them. Unable to cheer him up in conversation, Finn declares he will take Simon on a quest. Simon screaming as he hangs upside down over some thorns. Finn takes him down and brings him into the forest with blindfolded. They enters the most ancient part of U. Finn reveals that no one should ever go there, but then casually said to set up camp. He then asks Simon catch a fish from the creek. Simon steps into a creek and tries to catch a fish, but ends up stabbing one of the eyes of a giant fish monster. Finn shows up with a big wooden stake and stabs the fish. He compliments Simon and asks him if he feels better. Simon said there was a little guy in the fish, so he pats him on the face and goes up to the fish monster to thank him for his sacrifice. Finn cooks an eye of the fish and notices Simon just holding an egg. Simon said he's not going to eat the egg, and explained it's for the coffee. Finn is impressed and asks where he picked that up, and Simon admits that he used to be quite the outdoorsman back in his days, before giving Finn some coffee. Simon brings up a trip to Java with Betty in search of a lost temple, but half their supplies got washed away in a rainstorm. Finn tells him that talking about sad stuff is useless and he should forget about it. To divert his mind, he asked him to pick some firewoods. After searching a bit, Simon saw a tree. He started breaking the branch, but he was suddenly attacked by a bear. Finn tries to encourage Simon to fight back, but the bear manages to slash at Simon's arm, eventually forcing Finn to kill it himself. The both of them injured from the fight, Simon decides to go back home, follows the river, and encounters various U creatures, including some fairies he shoos away, and a little kid trying to grab a piece of fruit from a tree. He moves to help, but another creature appears and helps her instead. Reminded of his time with Marceline from this, he calls her, but she is in the middle of getting tattoos with Princess Bubblegum. Simon pretends that everything's fine and they make a promise to hang out later before ending the call. At home, Simon pulls out the Fiona and Cake book he threw earlier. The thing in the cage begins taunting him for thinking he can bring back Betty. Simon pulls off the cloth to reveal a goose. Simon attaches clamps to goose and begins a ritual to summon Betty, but it seems to fail. However, he tried again. A portal opens in the back of his head. Cake jumps out from his head. In the time room, Prisma watching Finn and Jake are running inside a mysterious temple, avoiding arrows shot at them. Jake is carrying an egg who claims to not be an egg, it's just out of shape. As they get closer to the exit, a giant chicken with multiple eyes flies in. They cuts the head off the giant chicken. To avoid the beep sound, he increased the TV volume and continued watching it. Meanwhile, Finn and Jake see Coca Tykes on copter trikes, so they go to attack them. Meanwhile, in Fiona World, Fiona chases after Cake, who jumps into a sparkly blue portal. Fiona jumps in and looked in there, but is stunned to see that Cake isn't there. Fiona continues to search for Cake. Back in U, Simon is stunned to see Cake in his house. He wonders why he's still in his house and asked Cake if she's the portal. Realizing that she can't talk, Simon gives her the universal translator that he got from the dog. He then got surprised to hear her call out for Fiona. She runs around and jumps on top of some boxes. He then realizes that the cat is Cake and asks how she got there. Cake said she heard a song and hums it, leading Simon to grab her and ask where she heard it from. Cake scratches Simon's face and runs to the door, scratching on it because she wants to go out. She then runs around and knocks over Choose Goose's cage and runs into the little area where Golb's statue was settled. Suddenly Astrid knocks on Simon's door wanting her book back. Cake runs out and Astrid points out that the cat looks just like Cake, but Simon closes the door, which made Astrid sad. Meanwhile, Cake runs around and looked for Fiona. She sees someone similar to Fiona, but she finds out it wasn't her in the very next moment. Cake continues running until she falls off the human island into Ooh, looking at the Candy Kingdom and the Ice Kingdom. After falling into a forest, Cake takes shelter inside a tree. Cake wakes up the next morning and takes a look at her surroundings for catching a squirrel who was pulling some apples in a cart. Cake nearly claws it until seeing the ice thing laughing as he flies to the Ice Kingdom. Cake decides she wants to go there before the squirrel apologizes for running into her. The squirrel offers her an apple and she takes a bite, causing her to shrink. The squirrel admits the apples are cursed, which made Cake angry. The squirrel said there's magic strawberries that can uncurse her if she goes with him to the market, so she agrees to go with him. Back in Fiona World, Fiona is still looking for Cake and finds Ellis with Marshall, who was sharing a bottle of wine at the statue of Betty Groff. Fiona said she's been searching for hours. Ellis said Cake couldn't have gotten far with her stubby little legs, and Marshall agrees, saying she'll turn up. Fiona tells them that while this sounds nuts, but she swore that she saw Cake jump into a sparkly blue portal in an ice cream cart. Marshall said that does sound nuts, but Ellis disagrees and tells her not to doubt herself. After he plays with his guts and tells her to look for the sparkly blue portal, he and Marshall both fall asleep. Fiona decided to do whatever it takes to find Cake since Cake needs her. Back in Ooh, Cake told the squirrel that she thought she needed Fiona, but she actually kinda likes being on her own. The squirrel asked who Fiona is and Cake describes her. Cake wants to make her own decisions, so the squirrel wonders what she wanted to do. Cake doesn't know, but she'll figure it out once she gets to the blue sparkly place, so for now she's gonna follow her mind. Cake and the squirrel come across a big log blocking their way. Cake's instincts told her something is off, and suddenly the squirrel's ex-roommates showed up to take the squirrel back to the tree. The squirrel refuses, so they try to kidnap him again. Cake scratches them all but gets poked by the porcupine. The animals decide that Cake is dangerous, so they ran away. The squirrel thanked her for saving him and wanted to be her best friends, but Cake said she just doesn't like bullies and told him to take her to the strawberries. They finally get to the market and Cake is excited since everything's shiny to her. The squirrel takes her to his boss and told her that he ran into some trouble, but Cake saved him, so the boss said fruit is free for heroes. Cake asks for strawberries, so she gave him one and takes a bite, making her grow big. Cake eats multiple types of fruit, causing her to grow and shrink before she finally eats one that makes her go back to her regular size. Cake decided to head off to the blue sparkly place. Simon revives Choose Goose, who wonders why he saved him. He told him that he's nothing more than a spell battery to him. Simon tapes his mouth shut and said this time he won't think about Fiona and Cake. Back in Fiona World, Fiona puts signs for a sparkly blue portal. She briefly falls asleep but wakes up when she hears Gary using his keys to unlock the bakery. When she calls his name, which made him scared, Fiona asked him if he saw Cake since she ran away yesterday into a portal. Gary apologizes and asks if there's anything he can do. She asks for a frozen triple shot latte. When she lays her head down, Gary suggests she should take a nap, but Fiona refuses him. Back in Ooh, Simon is performing the ritual as Fiona gets a brain freeze and yells at Gary for too much ice. She then sees sparkles in her drink and looked at the refrigerator as another portal forms in the refrigerator. Fiona goes through the portal to Ooh and is amazed that it was a portal, but is confused that it led to an apartment. Once the portal in Simon's head was closed, she noticed him and remembers the ice prince in her dream. Simon notices Fiona and said she's not real, but Fiona asks if he saw a cat go through there. He claims she's not real and is a manifestation of Ice King's madness. He became angry at Choose Goose and grabs him. That was his last chance to see Betty. She tried to open the door but can't, as she wonders what kind of weirdo lives in a garage. Fiona is amazed that she's in a whole other world. She then sees Astrid and asks if she saw her cat. Astrid says she saw one that looks exactly like Cake. Astrid saw Fiona's name tag, guessing that she's a Fiona and Cake fan too. She then asked her if she has anything that belongs to Cake. Fiona gave her some hairs of Cake which was stuck on her uniform, and Astrid takes one to use in order to track Cake's location with her gadget. They both ride down in a hoverbike to Cake's location in Ooh at the market. When they notice many people around Cake, Fiona saw that Cake was trapped. Fiona grabs a guy to smash the wood, but Cake tells her to just pull the pin. She was surprised that Cake can talk. They attacked them, but Fiona attacked everyone to defend Cake. Astrid then realizes that the duo really are Fiona and Cake and asked if they can go on an adventure. Fiona chuckled, and before she could answer her, she and Cake are beamed out of by Prismo. A mysterious customer in a restaurant was drinking tea. The owner tells the customer that they're about to close, but the customer promises that he won't stay long and finishes his tea. He says that this might be the most delicious tea he has ever tasted. He then said he almost understood why the owner abandoned his post for this quaint life and calls him Carosiphon, causing the owner to turn into a flame being, and the customer turns into the mysterious scarab. Carosiphon told him he is not going back because he don't like sacred flames, but he likes tea. Scarab subdues him. Before checking to see who's next on his list of fugitives, he swipes until he saw Prismo. In the time room, Prismo was hanging out in his hot tub as his remote continues to beep. Wyatt complains that the beeping is preventing him from concentrating on his wish, eventually wishing that it would be quiet enough for him to think. Unfortunately, Prismo immediately grants his wish, transporting Wyatt to a silent film-like world. Prismo finally checks what the beeping is, and finds out it's a crossover in the main timeline of Ooh. Searching through it on his screen, he is surprised to find Fiona and Cake. He immediately teleports the two into the time room, but became confused by their strange appearance, so he removed Cake's translator and gave her actual voice, and changing both her and Fiona into their appearances from Ice King's fiction. To check how Fiona and Cake got into Ooh, Prismo checks Simon's mind, only to find he cannot access it. He teleports Simon, who was in the middle of a shower, into the time room. After giving him cloth, Prismo asked about Fiona and Cake, only to find out that he was trying to summon Betty. He complained that he should be allowed to try after Prismo himself previously failed, but Prismo scolds him. Prismo introduces himself to Fiona and Cake. Then he gave them a quick overview of the multiverse by showing them places. He admits at one point he got tired of just fulfilling others' wishes and decided to try creating something for himself, creating characters of Fiona and Cake. Realizing he had simply copied Finn and Jake in Ooh, he leaned into it and had them go on adventures with similar characters like Marshall and Prince Gumball. Fiona and Cake are amazed at their old lives and question why their world is now boring. Prismo realized what happened, and because it was illegal for him to create an alternate universe, he hid Fiona and Cake's universe where no one could find it. However, because Ice King was cured, that caused Fiona and Cake's world to lose all its magic, and Prismo was unable to go back into Simon's mind to continue affecting the world. Simon was surprised to learn they were real the whole time and is angry that Prismo used him in such a way. Prismo assumes they will all be fine so long as no one else knows, but suddenly Scarab knocked on his door. Prismo divides himself into two. One escorts Fiona, Cake, and Simon to the exit, while the other distracts Scarab. Scarab asked why Prismo ignored his universe breach alarm twice, but Prismo replied he needed to change the batteries. As Fiona complains she and Cake just want to go back to Ooh, Prismo explains Scarab is a god auditor. They could all get into serious trouble if Scarab finds out about them. They pass through the time core, where Prismo explains the concept of the multiverse. However, because Fiona and Cake's universe is unauthorized, it is way off the map, and its mere existence could have dangerous effects on other realities. They finally arrive at their destination. As it turns out, Prismo wants to force Simon to reopen the portal so they can put Fiona and Cake back in their universe. Fiona and Cake tries to run away. Meanwhile, Scarab finds out about them due to Prismo messing up who he was talking to. Scarab understood about Prismo's mistake. Fiona and Cake end up back in the same room as before, just as Scarab breaks in, promising to turn in Prismo, destroy the rogue universe and Fiona and Cake with it. Prismo made his mind to help Fiona and Cake, giving them the time remote and telling them and Simon to run as he holds off Scarab. Despite initial reluctance, Simon ultimately agrees to go with them and they escaped using the remote. They arrive in a cornfield in a different universe. Fiona and Cake suggest just hitting buttons on the remote to get back to Ooh, but Simon warns them that they don't know where the buttons lead and they could just end up back in the time room. Noticing his old Ice King garb, Simon tells Fiona and Cake he knows how to protect them from the Scarab, bring magic back to their world, and make it last forever by becoming the Ice King again. In the Farmworld reality, a mother tries to calm her baby boy who was crying as they were riding in a carriage. Suddenly Ice Finn appears, freezes their horses and freezes the woman and her baby. In the present, Simon, Fiona and Cake are revealed to be in Farmworld. Simon explains his plans to them about becoming the Ice King again, which will make himself magic and immortal while restoring magic to their world so that they can continue to exist and he can fight off the Scarab. Fiona and Cake are on board. Simon suggested that they should head to the nearest library. Simon sees a suit on a scarecrow that looks like Farmworld Finn, so he switches clothes with the scarecrow. As the three of them walk, flies surround Fiona's shirt, so she decided to take it off because it was really started to smell. After Simon says it looks like they're going the right way, the three of them see a nearby town and Fiona is excited to get some road loot. After Fiona and Cake get some road loot, Simon says they look conspicuous, so they should keep a low profile until they know what the place holds. Fiona told Simon to relax since she played a lot of post-apocalyptic RPGs, so the more loot the better. Simon tells them to keep moving, so Fiona tells them to lighten up and suggests that if the bug guy hasn't caught them by now, maybe he gave up. Meanwhile, in the time room, Prismo, who was captured and turned into a cube, but he laughs. Scarab asks if something's funny and Prismo tells him good luck working his TV wall without his remote. Scarab drops Prismo into his hot tub, opens a section of the TV wall with a crystal and begins to track them down. Back in Farmwood, Simon, Fiona and Cake enter the town to see everyone going through their daily lives. Fiona told Simon that she fits right in and he's the one who looks conspicuous. The other citizen says there's been no magic there since the days of the snowman. After Cake hisses at them, Simon whispers to Cake to act like a normal cat. Simon finally finds a library but is shocked to see that a citizen took a bunch of books and throws them into the fire. Tromo from the Destiny gang told them they're about to get this funeral started and asked them to shut up and pay respect. Tromo then introduces Big Destiny and claims that he's the savior of the wastelands and the defeater of the snowman. Big Destiny said sadness is not allowed and today they party for the death of Popcorn. Some citizens bring Popcorn's body to the fire and throw his body in as Big Destiny describes how Popcorn died doing what he loved by riding an alligator like a horse. Fiona said that Popcorn seemed cool as they continue watching Big Destiny make his speech about how Popcorn's territory now belongs to the Destiny gang. When someone from the Reindeer Boys tries to tell Big Destiny about how Popcorn signed a treaty on his deathbed about how his territory would go to the Reindeer Boys, Big Destiny's daughter, Little Destiny, rolls down and punches him before being lifted back up to Big Destiny. Simon stands by his earlier statement to keep a low profile, but Fiona says that it's like she said, you've got to punch and push your way around to get what you want. Fiona then grabs Farmworld Starchy and asks what he knows about the magic crown. Fiona then tackles someone else asking the same question before Choose Bruce speaks up and claims that he has the crown. She goes up to him and asks how much. Bruce told her to present her wares and he'll take their measure. After she pulls stuff out of her backpack, he decides her phone is nice, so she gives it to him and he gives her the crown, which turns out to be made from paper. After Simon said that's trash, Fiona demands her phone back, but Bruce says no returns. When he told her she got burned and he doesn't care, he pulls out a bat with other weapons attached to it. Cake stretches a giant fist, punches him, destroying his stand and calling him a crook. She compliments Cake before taking her phone back from Bruce. Cake tried to stretch her arm back to normal but has trouble, so Simon and Fiona help her get out of there. Simon told Cake that she's too reckless and Cake replied to him by saying no one saw that, but it turns out someone did. Peanut threatens to eat Cake and get the magic fist, so Fiona tried to attack the bigger citizen but she failed. After she's knocked back, Peanut threatens to cut her ear off since he claims that someone beat him to cutting her nose off, but Fiona, Cake and Simon are saved by Jay, who threatens to cut his nose off. Little Destiny jumps in and knocks the boy back, tells the other guy to know his place and told Jay not to come back. The boy led Simon, Fiona and Cake out of there. He leads them out of the city through the pipes and says that it's obvious they're new since no one there likes to talk about magic. Jay reveals that his dad was the one who found the crown, so Simon said he wants to meet Jay's dad. Jay takes them to his dad. Simon told Fiona that Jay's dad is actually this world's version of Finn and he's her counterpart. Finn was upset that Jay brought outsiders, but Jay told him not to be mad because they were in trouble. After he introduces Fiona, Simon and Cake, Finn points out that she's a magic cat and he doesn't truck with magic. Jay told him that Peanut was going to eat Cake, so Finn reminds him that he doesn't like him messing with the Destiny gang. Then he told Simon, Fiona and Cake that they can stay. As they went inside, he asked his kids to set the table for 3 more since they have guests. One of Finn's kids told him that there's a cat at the table, but he said that the cat is also a guest. Bonnie wonders what will happen if the Destiny gang comes to their house, so Finn replied he'll slay them if he has to and then serves the soup. Back at the cornfield, the Scarab enters Farmworld and saw Simon's cloth on the scarecrow. After smelling it, he ensures that Fiona, Cake and Simon are in the reality. He makes his way into town and disguises himself as a human, approaching Bruce and asked if he saw a group of strange travelers. Bruce offers help if he had something to barter, so Scarab offers his unmurdered life and scares him into revealing that they've followed Jay. Back at Finn's house, Fiona and Cake slurp down their soup. Bonnie asked Cake if all cats can talk where she comes from and Cake says no, but maybe they can once they put the magic crown on Simon's head, which made Finn angry. Finn calls Simon a fool and tells them they can sleep in the hayloft but be gone by morning. Jay goes out to the hayloft to wake Simon. After Jay tells Simon about where Finn found the crown, he decides to take them to that same place where he found it since he was heading there anyways. In the house, Finn sits by the fire with Jake and remembers the time he wore the crown and went insane as Ice Finn. His thoughts were interrupted by Scarab. Finn said that nobody's there but him and his kids. After Scarab leaves, Finn goes to the hayloft to warn Simon, Fiona and Cake only to find them gone. Bonnie pops out of the hay and explains him everything. Finn told Bonnie to get back in the house, wake her siblings up and barricade the doors. Afterwards, Finn pulls something out of his trunk. At the crater, Cake asks Simon what the crown smelled like. He associated it with the smell of freshly cut grass. Cake sniffs around and leads them to the crown, but they're disappointed to find that it had already been destroyed by some very powerful magic. Simon suggests that they should try another universe and Cake goes for the remote, but Simon tells her to think about this. Fiona asks what's there to think about since there's squat for them there. She looks up to see Little Destiny and Jay. Jay reveals that she's with him and shares that he was looking for some cool stuff in the crater before being caught by Little Destiny. He found a jewel from the crown and gave it to her, so she decided to let him go but threatened to gut him if she saw him again, and they've been secretly together ever since. Fiona and Cake were both happy for them. Little Destiny begins coughing and Jay notices she's cold again. He reveals that he's been searching for cures but has come up with nothing. Fiona told Simon to help her, but he told her he's an antiquarian. Jay asked Little Destiny that she should really tell her dad, but she refuses since weakness is not an option. Big Destiny suddenly arrives with the Destiny Gang and yells at her that weakness is worse than coughing death. The Destiny Gang close in on them and Fiona tries to fight but is grabbed. Cake tries to stretch a punch but she barely taps his armor. Big Destiny grabs Little Destiny and kicks Jay down. Little Destiny has been wearing a jewel of the crown around her neck, and that's what's been making her sick since it's infused with ice magic. Jay is horrified, but Big Destiny claims that his and Little Destiny's love was just a play to take her down. After Big Destiny throws down the jewel, Simon tells Fiona and Cake that if they get the jewel then he can use it to reprogram the remote to track magic crowns. As Cake tries to reach for it, Big Destiny gives Little Destiny a knife to kill Jay, but Finn arrives on Bartram just in time to aim his flamethrower arm at Big Destiny and orders him to let them go. Jay runs up to Little Destiny and told her that if she really believes he'd hurt her then go ahead and do it. Finn is surprised at Jay as Cake stretches her tail to get the jewel. The Destiny Gang cheer her on to stab Jay, but she instead attacks the Destiny Gang started attacking Jay and Little Destiny, but Finn jumps in front of them and fights them off. Simon opens Prismo's remote after getting the jewel. Scarab arrives and reveals he picked some wild fennel before revealing his true form. Big Destiny runs and told Finn he got this as the rest of the Destiny Gang flees. He aims his cannon arm at Scarab, who tried to attack but Finn deflects and sends him flying, shooting him with the flamethrower arm. Unfortunately, Scarab survives and takes four-legged form and stabs him in the head. Simon puts the jewel in the remote and gets the three of them out, but unfortunately Scarab is beamed out with them. In Fiona World, Gary knocks on Fiona's door to her apartment and asked why she hasn't texted him back since she was supposed to help him shop. When Gary goes inside, he saw Fiona's apartment is messy and assumes that she's been robbed. Marshall comes out of her bathroom shower to tell him that this is just the way she lives. Gary is freaked out by Marshall and wonders who he is. After Marshall introduces himself, he asks Gary who he is. Meanwhile, in another alternate reality known as Winterworld, Simon, Fiona and Cake are beamed into an ice kingdom and are immediately pursued by the Scarab. They were saved by a mysterious ice wizard known as the Winter King, who freezes the Scarab in place. Simon realizes that the Winter King is an alternate version of him. After the Winter King introduces himself, Cake takes his crown and runs off but is caught and brought back by Winter King's giants. Fiona insists that Cake didn't mean any harm. The Winter King is amused that the cat is named Cake and asks Fiona who she is. After Fiona introduces herself, she tells him that the reason they need his crown is to make Simon cursed and magical again in order to bring magic back to their world and protect it. Simon agrees with Fiona when the Winter King asks if it's true. The Winter King said they can't take his crown, but he has a solution to their problem. The Winter King invites Simon, Fiona and Cake inside, and Simon is surprised by the way the Winter King's throne room looks. The Winter King said his entire throne room is made of clear ice. Simon asks the Winter King how he's so functional if he's just another cursed. Simon replied that he was once like Simon was when dealing with the madness of the crown, the insanity, until he used a force of sheer willpower to regain his sanity, fashion his dreams and build his kingdom. Simon wonders how his alternate self conquered the madness since it's so hard to resist the crown's power and do something really wonderful. The Winter King claims that making something wonderful is as easy as manifesting his own reality and offers to show him how. Then he told Simon that once he makes a duplicate magic crown, Fiona world will be restored to its former state. Fiona asks the Winter King if he tinkers with the original curse, then will she be able to fight in the new version since she got stomped in the last one. The Winter King gives Fiona an ice sword and has some ice scouts attack to test her abilities before having them stand down. Fiona is amazed since she was able to defend herself better than she did before. Fiona sees a bunch of texts from Gary, finally responds to Gary that she's okay and the man in her apartment is Marshall Lee. Gary is relieved that Fiona is okay but is upset that she's flaking out on him again. Gary stood up to leave and tells Marshall that he has a ton of errands and baking to do. Marshall asks if Gary was the one who made the bag of biscuits Fiona was carrying around and says that they were good. Gary thanks him and Marshall asks if there's food where he's heading. He said probably, so Marshall decided to leave with him. After they leave, Ellis comes out from under Fiona's bed and says bring something for him too. Simon asks the Winter King if he's sure it's not too much trouble and he responds by telling Simon to relax and it'll take just 1 week to make a duplicate crown in his laboratory. Cake felt a bit suspicious but Fiona tells her not to be rude. The Winter King told them in the meantime they should feel free to partake in the pleasures of the Winter Kingdom. Cake told Fiona that they should check out a candy mountain since it looks amazing, but the Winter King tells her no because that place is forbidden, but he quickly corrects himself and says it can be dangerous out there. When the Winter King asks Simon to help him in the laboratory, some ice scouts ask Fiona to join them in their training session, so Fiona tells Cake not to move so she won't get lost. However, Cake slides down the ice over to the frozen Scarab and kicks his ice prison. Scarab telepathically calls Cake and Fiona an abomination and a disease and tells her he'll break free from his prison. Candy Queen takes both Simon and the Winter King back to her mountain, puts them both in a cage and they get out of the gum, but their wrists are cuffed with a candy person and the gum cage is strong. The Winter King tells Simon not to worry since she kidnaps him a lot and thinks they belong together. Simon wonders why. The Candy Queen reveals her plans to put them in a blender with her and set the oven to 350 degrees so they'll be baked together, horrifying both of them. Fiona, Cake and the Ice Scouts attack the Candy People as the Winter King calls for help. Simon says that the Candy Queen needs their help since he knows there's a brilliant person in there somewhere trying to get out. The Winter King says they don't need to fix her, they just need to be rescued, and yells for the Ice Scouts to help them. Fiona and Cake find the Candy Queen about to drop Simon and the Winter King into a mixer to turn them into a batter. Fiona made it to the top and Simon begs Fiona to stop since there's something wrong with her brain that can be fixed. The Winter King on the other hand told her it can't knock her out. Fiona and the Candy Queen charge at each other and Fiona is able to knock her down with one kick before freeing both of them. Fiona gives the Winter King his crown back and he calls her both the Beauty and the Beast. Fiona calls him Ice Prince and wonders if she's dreaming. He told her to embrace him and they share a kiss, but suddenly the crown loses its magic and the Winter King turns back into Simon, rapidly ages and begs Fiona to help him before turning to dust. The Ice Scouts, the Winter Kingdom and everything created by the Winter King melts due to his death. Meanwhile, the Candy Queen turns back into Princess Bubblegum. Princess Bubblegum is happy to be free as she kicks the useless crown away. Simon realizes that the Winter King had cast a spell to deflect his madness onto her. She reveals that he cast his madness directly into her brain. Princess Bubblegum said it's like a fairy tale. Fiona's kiss broke the curse before manifesting a lollipop, pinning it on Fiona and thanking her before kissing her cheek. Later on, Fiona sits down and wonders what she did was wrong. Scarab appears and says that what she did wrong was existing, and before he tries to attack her, Cake and Simon again teleport out of that universe, angering the Scarab. In an alternate reality where everyone was a baby version of themselves, Simon tries his alternate self's crown, which was squeaky, and said it's not gonna work either. Fiona is sad because she thought back in the previous universe she was living the dream, but she was hurting a bunch of innocent candy people. She wonders if she's been hurting people in all these universes. Simon tells Fiona that place was messed up because that Simon was messed up. He promised Fiona that the next world will have a crown that will work and he'll be cursed the right way. A young Marceline is seen running from some losers. She finds the corpse of Simon, revealing this world to be an alternate reality. After Marceline compares her foot to Simon's, she takes his shoe and is approached by a mysterious figure. Meanwhile, Fiona, Cake and Simon are beamed to the same universe. Fiona tells Simon that his pocket is smoking, causing Simon to pull out Prismo's remote and blow on it. As Fiona takes a walk, Cake comforts her by reminding her that the Winter King was stone cold nasty and he deserved exactly what he got. Cake insists that they will succeed in making everything better once they retrieve the crown and restore magic to Fiona World. Simon finds Fiona and Cake to tell them he believes there's only enough magic remaining in the jewel for one more jump between dimensions. Fiona suggests that they should jump again immediately, but their conversation is cut short when a group of vampire underlings emerge from a nearby building. Simon and Fiona take cover behind an overturned car nearby, but Cake stands her ground. Fiona calls out to her, but she ignores Fiona and begins fighting the vampires. While Cake pins the vampires down with her paw, Simon tells Fiona that they need to make some rudimentary stakes. Fiona grabs a wooden plank and tries to break it over her knee, distracting Cake and allowing one of the vampires to escape her clutches. Fiona attacks it with the plank and it breaks, creating a makeshift stake. As she stabs the vampire in random places, Simon tells her to go for the heart. Cake decides she's had enough and eats the heads of the vampires. Cake is thrilled by the action, but Fiona is frightened after narrowly avoiding the vampire underlings. Simon mentions that this world reminds him of the world as it was right after the Mushroom War, when he first met Marceline. When more vampires appear, Cake springs into action with stake paws, but is doused in holy water, which reduces the vampires to a giant plume of dust. Fiona rushes into the cloud to check on Cake, where they encounter a red and white tank resembling Peppermint Butler. It demands to see the trio's teeth and reports to its occupants that there are no vamps. A mysterious pink woman in a gas mask comes out of the tank and called the group for being Death Wishers. When she removes her mask, they realize that she's an alternate version of Princess Bubblegum. In this universe, she resembles a Solitaire. She observed the group's battle with the vampires and is looking to recruit Cake for her magical abilities and murder skills. Cake declines, and Fiona explains that the three of them are looking for a magic crown. Bonnie, realizing that they have a common goal, explains that the Vampire King uses the crown to create a permanent cloud cover, shielding the vampires from the sunlight and allowing them to take over. Bonnie gives Simon, Fiona, and Cake a tour of Peppermint Tank's interior and introduces them to Martin and Huntress. After that, she details her plan for taking down the Vampire King. She and her team plan to use garlic bombs to flush the low-level minions out of the palace. Bonnie's main concern is a vampire she calls the Star, who Huntress explains is the vicious ward of the Vampire King. Martin arrives at the table with a pot of beans, but before anyone can eat, Baby Finn emerges from Fiona's backpack. Bonnie is enraged that Fiona brought a baby to Vampire World and storms off. Scarab has returned to the time room and frantically clicks through scenes in Vampire World, searching for Simon and the crossovers. As it turns out, Scarab has been ignoring assignment notifications. Prismo tries to bargain with him, explaining that he can just zap everything back to normal, since Scarab hasn't been able to chase them down. This causes Scarab to have an epiphany. Instead of chasing Fiona and Cake, he could simply find the crown they're after and wait for them to come to him. Just as Scarab locates the crown in Vampire World, however, he's engulfed in a blue light. Meanwhile, inside of the Peppermint Tank, Fiona asks Huntress a series of questions on what sorts of trivial things can kill a vampire. Suddenly, the tank issues a proximity alert. Some humans are outside, blocking the tank's path and begging for help. Bonnie refuses to stop for them, but Fiona insists on helping them and hops out of the tank, and Martin decides to join her. Huntress observes their interactions with the humans, and realizes that it's a pair of vampire underlings puppeteering corpses as a trick. They quickly dispatch the two vampires, but the tank drives into a trap that causes it to roll over. Marceline flies in and confronts them, describing the trap as her welcome. This is who Bonnie called the Star, and she's shocked when she heard Simon use her real name. Bonnie and Huntress try to attack her, but Marceline easily evades everything they throw at her before swooping down and stealing Martin's soul. Without his soul, he stands there unconsciously as she drains away all of his blood, killing him. Fiona is spared the same fate when Cake stretches out and pulls her away from Marceline. Bonnie angrily declares that she'll have Marceline's heart, to which Marceline responds with an air kiss. She flies back to the palace, laughing and calling Bonnie a loser. Bonnie asks Peppermint Tank how long repairs will take, and it replies with an estimate of 16 hours and 43 minutes. Simon offers to help with repairs, but Bonnie ignores his suggestion and threatens him with a knife. She demands to know how Simon knows Marceline's name. Simon timidly explains that he's from a different universe with its own Marceline, who he helped raise. This version of Marceline was a vampire hunter who eventually fell in love with their version of Bonnie. Bonnie is disgusted with the idea of this, but withdraws her knife. As she stomps away, Fiona apologizes, and Bonnie berates her for costing her Martin and the tank. Cake diffuses the conflict by shape-shifting and offering to take the place of the tank. Fiona objects to Cake putting herself in danger, reasoning that there are other crowns in the multiverse, but Cake assures her that she can do it. After hearing this, Fiona volunteers to take Martin's place, and Bonnie answers by tossing her Martin's jacket. Bonnie announces to the group that they have the advantage of surprise. The vampires think that they're still stuck in the broken-down tank miles away. She explains the rest of her plan and the goal to plant garbos throughout the hive and detonate them the moment the crown is knocked from the Vampire King's head, flushing all the vampires out into the clear sky where they'll burn up in the sunlight. Bonnie activates the detonation countdown on the bombs and gives Huntress a piece of gum to retrieve the crown with. The bombs detonate and the low-level vampires flee the hive, but something is wrong. The clouds haven't cleared. The Vampire King emerges from the hive with Hunter's arrow-filled corpse in his arms. Marceline emerges from behind him to taunt Bonnie. Fiona, Cake, and Simon dodge attacks from the Vampire King as Marceline attacks Bonnie. The two of them wrestle on the ground, and the vampire orders Marceline to either finish her off or make the fight more interesting. Marceline and Bonnie continue to fight. Each has several opportunities to kill the other, but neither take them. Simon suggests that they bail, but Cake notices that the Vampire King is distracted by the fighting, creating an opportunity for her to take the crown. Fiona stops her, fearing for Cake's life, but she persists. Fiona takes the remote from Simon and Cake tries to take it away from her. Their wrestling over the remote eventually breaks it. Simon screams, and the Vampire King sees Cake trying to steal the crown. Fiona hits the button on the remote right before the Vampire King tries to eat Cake. Marceline suggests that Bonnie joins her, and she considers for a moment, but declines. Bonnie tries to stab her, but Marceline warns her that she'll fall to her death if she pushes her. Together then, Bonnie replies. Marceline and Bonnie continue to fall. Simon and Betty traverse a creek, with Simon taking a cautious approach by walking on some slippery rocks. Betty simply removes her boots and socks and walks through. Simon removes his shoes, only to slip on a rock and fall into the water. In the present, Simon, Fiona, and Cake walk through a new alternate universe in search of the crown, but find no sign of it. Cake is still angry at Fiona for transporting them out of Vampire World before she could steal the crown from Vampire King, despite Fiona insisting she saved Cake. With the remote broken, Simon foresees they will likely be stuck in this world unless they can find a way to jumpstart it. Meanwhile, Scarab is met by Orbo, his boss. Simon, telling Fiona about his relationship with Betty, relating how they first met at the library, and reveals that she was one of the only people who believed in his research into magical artifacts, and eagerly agreed to join his expedition to find the Enchiridion, though she gave up on a planned trip to Australia to look for petroglyphs by doing this. The story is interrupted by Cake's screech at encountering something in a decaying treehouse. That something turns out to be this universe's version of Bimo, who is oblivious to where everyone is. Meanwhile, Orbo scolds Scarab for ignoring their calls. Scarab tries to report Prismo's illegal alternate universe, but Orbo does not believe him and refuses to let him contact his own boss. Bimo lead the group to the location of the Ice Kingdom. Simon continues to share his story at Fiona's request, describing how he and Betty bonded on their trip with an encounter revealing his cautious approach to exploration. They arrive at the former location of the Ice Kingdom, it having completely melted and no sign of this universe's Ice King. Simon tells them there is no luck in finding the crown and their only hope is fixing the remote. Simon continues the story of him and Betty, recalling Betty declined an offer to join him in taking credit for discovering the Enchiridion, but before he can get to the best part, they arrive at the Candy Kingdom. Not finding the princess, Bimo instead puts on some of her old clothes and crown and presents himself as Princess Bubblegum. He mysteriously claims that one day everyone turned into a skeleton, followed by the arrival of Jerry. He inspects the remote and claims it is beyond his ability to fix. Cake throws a tantrum, blaming Fiona for their troubles. Simon follows her to the balcony and continues his and Betty's story, talking about how even after they went their separate ways, he could not stop thinking about her. Later, he discovered a note she left for him praising his research, as well as admiring him as a person after their expedition, expressing a wish to stay by his side. Learning she was planning to leave on another expedition, Simon intercepted her at the bus stop and declared he felt the same way, marking the beginning of their romantic relationship. They are interrupted by Bimo, who is moved to tears by the story. Resolving to help them however he can, he offers to use his own robot heart to jumpstart the remote at the risk of his own life. He connects the remote to his heart and tries to jumpstart it, but the attempt fails, resulting in his death, and when Cake tearfully grabs his body it turns into a normal alarm clock from Fiona World. The group bury Bimo outside the Candy Kingdom, with Cake ultimately turning to Fiona for comfort. She then suggests finding Jerry and delivering the bad news. They eventually come to a pit, the home of Jerry. Upon entering, they find several skeletons and Jerry himself. Simon realizes he was actually the Lich, who immobilizes them before they can run. Meanwhile, Orbo teleports Scarab to a different room and allows him to speak his mind. Scarab describes all of Prismo's actions and makes the case that he should be allowed to finish his job. Orbo is prepared to attack Scarab anyway, but his boss intervenes. The Lich dryly observes Ice Wizard's return and how he would have killed them in the past, but simply releases them and returns to his dormant state. Simon told Fiona and Cake who Jerry really is and realizes this is a world in which the Lich succeeded in killing all life, but the Lich himself is depressed because his purpose has been fulfilled, with nothing left. In turn, there is no way for them to continue surviving in this world without any life. Fiona reluctantly reveals she has been carrying the crown, having found it in this world's Ice Kingdom. However, after seeing what he was like as Ice King, she did not want Simon to become him again, so she kept it hidden. She also fears what may happen to her world once the crown is put on. Simon assures her things will be fine and that he is prepared to sacrifice himself for their sake. Simon begins the ritual so Fiona and Cake can return to their world, which alerts the Lich. The portal reopens and Fiona and Cake enter it. Just as the scarab arrives, Simon starts to put the crown on. His memory of Betty causes the main purpose of the ritual to finally succeed, teleporting him and Scarab into Galb's world as the Lich watches in silence. Fiona and Cake are back in their world, which had its magic restored thanks to the Ice King's crown. As she and Cake explore it, they find out Gary, who had become a monstrous deformed mutant, Marshall, a vampire that bursts into flames in the sun, and Ellis being eaten alive with spaghetti. They retreat to their apartment, where Fiona is horrified to encounter a deformed version of Simon in their freezer. She then wakes up in the town's ice skating rink. She soon understands Cake had the same dream she had. They met Gary and Marshall and finds out the two are now a couple. Fiona tells them the reality, that their world is in Simon's head, and their world is about to turn magical. Gary and Marshall are confused until Cake surprises them by accidentally showing her powers while complaining that Simon is taking too long. Simon wakes up in Galb's dimension, where he encounters the Lich praying to Galb, demanding to know why he has lost all meaning, now that he has fulfilled his purpose in destroying the world. Betty appears, and Simon expresses that his spell finally worked when he was not even trying. Betty proceeds to destroy the Lich, turning him into one of the mysterious shapes associated with Galb before turning her attention to Simon. He tells Betty of his personal guilt over wasting her second chance for him and reveals his plan to use the crown to save Fiona and Cake. Before he can put it on, however, Betty activates her powers on him. Inu, Shermie and Beth finish vandalizing Gibbon's palace. As they venture on to the next step of their revolution, Shermie suddenly goes into a trance as Betty's spell teleports Simon's mind into Shermie's body. Mistakenly assuming he is in another alternate universe, Simon protests Betty's actions and explains his circumstances to Beth. Beth ultimately agrees to take Simon to the library where he can find more information about this universe's crown. Meanwhile, Scarab wakes up in the Galb's dimension and seeing an immobilized Simon and attempts to use his crystal tool on him. Betty intervenes, turning Scarab into separate miniature Scarab bugs and splitting them into more each time Scarab tries to attack Simon. One of the Scarabs eventually succeeds in escaping into the portal to Fiona World, still open after the ritual. In the future, Beth and Simon arrive at the library where they retrieve some holobooks that Beth requests. Simon eventually finds an apparent copy of the holobook Ancient Artifacts, only for the two to be ambushed by the librarian-like pagelings who fight them for the books. Simon manages to retrieve the holobook and they escape. Fiona, Cake, Gary, Marshall, and Hunter manage to capture the Scarab bugs, keeping them separate so they cannot reform into the larger Scarab and destroy their reality. Prismo tries to break out of the cube that Scarab trapped him in, frustratedly declaring he needs to help Fiona and Cake. Figuring that Simon is still alive despite not having put on the crown, Cake suggests Fiona call Simon. They call Simon, but as he is still immobilized by Betty, he is unable to pick up. In the future, Beth and Simon arrive at hers and Shermie's reading spot under the fern tree. Simon assumes Ancient Artifacts was written by this world's version of him, and therefore holds the key to finding the crown. Beth shows that the holobook is trigger-based. They open it to learn it is a choose-your-own-adventure game following two characters, Casper and Nova, who are on a quest to find mysterious artifacts, including a magic crown. The holobook calls for them to choose to follow Casper's quest for the crown, or Nova's quest for other artifacts. Simon immediately chooses Casper's choice, only for it to be revealed the crown is elsewhere in the story. They try to start over and follow Nova's option, but the holobook refuses to let them change their choices. Still in the apartment, Fiona is unable to get a hold of Simon and worries he is hurt. She resolves to go back through the portal and help him. The rest of the group joins her. After they leave, LSP wakes up in the pile of clothing. Seeing the trapped Scarabs and unaware of their origin, he promptly frees them from captivity, only to be attacked. As the group outside prepares to take off, they are horrified to witness an explosion in the apartment and the completed Scarab standing in its rubble. The events of the Casper and Nova holobook that Beth and Shermie are reading is depicted as Casper and Nova fail to get the crown from the Moon Demon King. Nova suggests following them in a sunship, while Casper suggests checking the launchpad to see where he is going. Simon complains that the book is cheating by making the crown so hard to obtain. In Fiona World, Cake manages to open Scarab's crystal multi-tool and launches several of the beings Scarab captured before. However, Scarab kills several of them and launches himself at the group. He manages to regain his crystal tool and begins destroying the world. Cake tries to fight Scarab by turning into a massive kaiju. In the future, Simon and Beth reach the part of the story where they find the crown, but Simon is distraught to learn the options left for Casper getting the crown either result in Nova's death or in saving Nova being forced to forget her. He does not want either to happen and they should have more choices. Beth points out there would be more options if he had not picked Casper's options every time, noting if they had picked Nova's options they could have gone down a completely different path. Simon believes they were both looking for the crown, but Beth points out Nova was mostly following Casper because she was obsessed with him. Simon, recognizing the parallels with his and Betty's relationship, realizes that Casper could have been more thoughtful about what Nova was sacrificing. He is abruptly transported out of Shermie's body, while Shermie informs a puzzled Beth that he was a prisoner in his own head. Cake fight with the Scarab but ultimately fails, leaving her exhausted from overextending herself. As Scarab continues attacking the world, Fiona watches Scarab continues destroying their world. In Golb's dimension, Simon returns to his body and addresses Gol Betty, acknowledging he let Betty sacrifice her own desires for him, thinking back to the day at the bus stop where he stopped her from looking for petroglyphs in Australia as she originally planned. Stepping into his memory of this event, he causes the memory version of Simon to decide to join her in finding the petroglyphs. As they board the bus, however, he realizes this was not how it happened. Betty, speaking to him for the first time, acknowledges this and that they could have made better choices, but notes she does not have any regrets. They bid a bittersweet goodbye to each other, with Betty telling Simon he was a wonderful experience and Simon replying she was everything. Seeing this vision of Betty transform back into Gol Betty as she departs in the bus, he ponders if this happened in his head or was Betty actually talking to him. He reflects on his choice to put the crown back on and realizes he only did it because he thought helping Fiona and Cake would give him a reason to exist, only to know that he is no less worthy of existing than Fiona or Cake, which appears to please Gol Betty. Hearing the phone ringing, he picks up and finally speaks to Fiona, who tells him about the Scarab attacking her world. He prepared to put the crown on anyway, only for Fiona to tell him to stop, resolving she would rather fight and die for the world as it is than change it back. Simon protests that it is not fair that the world is in his head, but Fiona replies that if it were not, they would never have met. Simon fights the urge to put the crown back on and throws it away, protesting to Gol Betty that he did not ask for this responsibility. As he does this, Gol Betty causes him to cough up what he realizes is actually Fiona World, which takes the form of a dandelion seed head. He contacts Fiona again and reaches into the portal to hand it to her, gifting her control of her world. Proceeding to make a wish on it, the seeds spread across the world, gradually healing everyone and restoring the environment. Gol Betty picks up Simon and sends him flying away into the void, as Simon sees it seem to morph back into Golb's original form. Finding himself floating through a sea of dimensions represented as rocks, he searches for the one that will take him to Ooh. In the time room, Prismo finally frees himself and tries to track down Fiona World, only to watch Fiona World joined into the multiverse. Scarab continues trying to destroy everything, only for his damage to be reversed as he is not supposed to destroy an authorized universe. His boss calls him and informs him of this change in circumstance. Scarab prepares to destroy the world anyway with his bare hands. Seeing this, Prismo searches through the multiverse for a way to intervene. Meanwhile, Simon awakens back in Ooh, to his relief. Prismo finally summons Peppermint Tank, Baby Finn, Jay Mertens, Little Destiny, and the Squirrel to Fiona World to help fight the Scarab. Fiona eats some of the squirrel's strawberries to enlarge herself, fighting off the Scarab with Cake's help, and with their alternate universe friends get a hold of the crystal multi-tool and use it to trap Scarab in one of his own egg traps. They resolve to fix their world, while their alternate universe friends ask to remain in the universe. Fiona World is rebuilt, while Simon is appreciating his life in Ooh a little more. Scarab is forced by Orbo to tidy up the time room as a shadow being like Prismo, though Prismo told him Orbo may eventually let him grant wishes too. He offers to cheer him up by letting him use the character creation program. Scarab reluctantly agrees, suggesting they create a dark medieval mystery drama.